Hello, my friends. So I wanted to go over this article that was sent to me by a viewer. This is about a gentleman named Kenny Klein, who is a prominent figure in the pagan and Wiccan community, who has been, I believe, although it doesn't specify in this particular article, found guilty of possessing child pornography. So I think it's important for us to realize that this happens even within our own community and to expose it for what it is so that we can further protect ourselves. And when we see warning signs in the future, we can take it to the proper authorities. One of the things that our detractors like to accuse us of is keeping things secret and hidden and committing crimes that are never reported to the police. And this is further from the truth. The truth of the matter is, when crimes are committed within our own community, we need to report it to the police, and it is reported to the police. So I want to go over this article, and then I also want to give some warning signs for people who may be new to the community so that they can avoid situations similar to this and also from falling prey to predatory people who do occasionally lurk within our community to take advantage of people. So let's go over this. This is an article called New Orleans Jury Deciding Wiccan Priest Child Pornography Case by a gentleman named Ken Daly. A New Orleans jury has begun deliberations in the trial of Kenny Klein, the nationally known Wiccan priest and folk music performer from the Garden District, facing 20 counts of possessing and distributing child pornography. Klein, who is 62, is charged with 1 count of pornography involving a juvenile under the age of 13, and 19 counts of possession with intent to distribute pornography involving juveniles under the age of 17. He faces 10 to 40 years in prison if convicted of the first count, and 5 to 20 years on each of the other 19 accounts. He is facing 10 plus 95 years. He is facing life in prison. As we will see in this article, it does not look like that he used his position in the Wiccan and pagan community. Kenneth Klein is sick. Kenneth Klein is twisted, Michael told the jury. It is disturbing what was downloaded onto this man's computer. Now, yes, I think that this is the problem that we allow to perpetuate. This is a mental illness. This is a serious problem. It needs to be addressed before it gets to the point where somebody actually goes out and molests or has sex with children or possesses pornography on their computer. Anyone under the age of 18 is not in the right state of mind to understand what they are getting into sexually, and also the pedophilia, the attraction of that adults feel towards younger children, is a serious disease. It's a serious problem. But it needs to be addressed before it gets to this point where somebody begins to act on it, such as collecting pornography, etc. Okay, let's go on with the article. State Police Trooper Christopher Treadaway said it was testifying Wednesday that the Internet Protocol address registered Klein was noticed by undercover investigators, popping up several times in 2014 searching for PTHC videos, an acronym for preteen hardcore. Klein was arrested at his apartment in the 2800 block of Carnadolette Street on March 25, 2014. Prosecutors also presented 2 recorded jailhouse phone calls that Klein made to his 31-year-old fiancée, Lauren DeVoe, a former Tulane University librarian, who asked why he was arrested. Klein replied, "For having underage pornography on my computer, which you warned me about. I feel ashamed because I love you and I screwed things up." In a second call, DeVoe informs Klein on the allegations against him, and Klein says, "I was downloading a bunch of stuff and some of it apparently had teens in it." Klein's defense focused on the theory that the illegal videos were placed on his computer remotely, likely by or at the behest of Klein's former wife, Dr. Tisabora Katz, a former high priestess who co-founded the Blue Star tradition of Wicca that Klein discovered and joined during the 1980s in New York. I don't think so. Either he or his or his defense attorney is basically telling him to make up these bullshit lies. I'm pretty sure that I think that the case is pretty strong against him. I think that he was guilty of this. Obviously, if other information comes out later on and he's found to be innocent of this, obviously I will retract the statement. But for the time being, I'm under the assumption that he's guilty of this. And if you are guilty of something, just admit it. Just say, yes, I admit it. Don't try to blame it on other people like he's doing right here. This is just, trying to throw other people under the bus and not own up to your own actions is just deplorable, in my opinion. Klein's defense focused on the theory that the illegal videos were placed on his computer remote, likely by or at the behest of Klein's former wife, Dr. Tsipora Katz, a former high priestess who co-founded the Blue Star tradition of Wicca that Klein discovered and joined during the 1980s in New York. He is trying to shuffle the blame onto other people. He's not accepting responsibility for his actions. Phillips questioned Katz at length about the open sexuality of the coven she established in her youth, the communal household the couple shared with other Wiccans, a BDSM relationship she had with a previous husband, and past employment that included work as a phone sex operator and performer in New York peep shows. Now, this is something that I don't think that they brought this into play, but often you will hear people who are detractors or detractors of people who are into alternative sex acts like BDSM, homosexuality, cross-dressing, all of these various things. What they try to do is manipulate that into perversion, try to include everything into it, saying, oh, well, homosexuality leads to pedophilia, or BDSM leads to this and leads to... No. That's bullshit. If you are a consenting adult and you are consciously aware of what you are doing and you engage in a sexual activity that you are happy with, that you basically are volunteering to act in, and it is not harming anyone else and not harming you in the sense that you are okay with it, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem with people who are underage is that they are not in the right frame of mind to understand the full consequences of what they're doing. Phillips pressed Katz on whether she knew any white hat hackers, computer experts, often hired by the government or corporations to infiltrate network systems in search of security flaws. I do not know people who have that label in their profession, Katz said. I have friends that work in software, and friends who sell Tupperware, and friends who crochet sweaters for a living. Basically saying, so you're basically trying to imply that I hired people to hack into his computer? Yeah, okay. Why didn't I hire people to also, put him in Tupperware or knit him or crochet a sweater? I like that. She's just basically telling him, yeah, fuck off. Okay, so this is an addendum to the article that I just did a video on. The case for Kenny Klein has come to trial finally, and he was found guilty. So let me read you this article from Laura McKnight. It is entitled, Orleans Parish Jury Returns Guilty Verdict on All Counts in Child Pornography Case Against Wiccan Priest. Now, they keep mentioning that he's a Wiccan priest, and they just keep mentioning it. I get really annoyed with the media when they throw in unnecessary information like this. It would be like saying, Christian man in Kentucky convicted of pornography. Does it really matter that he was a Christian? The fact of the matter is that he is a criminal. He did something that was illegal, and now he is paying the price for it. But anyhow, again, this doesn't have anything to do with his religious leanings, but I'm going to continue to read the article anyway. A New Orleans jury on Thursday, April 6th, convicted nationally known Wiccan high priest and folk musician Kenny Klein of 20 counts of possessing child pornography following a 3-day trial that included a viewing of video evidence that had jurors appearing repulsed. A 3-day trial is fast, so there must have been a insurmountable amount of evidence against him, and 3 days is very quick. The jury voted 11-1 to convict Klein. He faces 10 to 40 years in prison on the first count and 5 to 20 years on each of the other 19 accounts. So I did a little math here. 10 plus 5 times 19 equals 95. 40 plus 20 times 19 equals 420. So he's facing between 95 to 420 years. If he got the minimum sentence, which is 95 years, and let's say it was cut in half for good behavior, that means that he's going to be spending at least 40 years in jail. He's spending the rest of his life in jail. He's 60 years old now. He's going to be spending 40 years. So unless he lives to be past 100, he's going to be spending the rest of his life in jail. And even so, after 100, you're 100 years old and you get released from jail, it's like, oh, okay, well, let me just crawl over here in this alleyway and die. There's nothing else you can do. I doubt people are going to help you out after 40 years. So he's spending the rest of his life in jail. Jurors returned a verdict at 9:15 p.m., more than 3 hours after they began deliberating the case at 5:38. Wow. So they came back and found him guilty in 3 hours of deliberation. So anyhow, that is the end of this article. Again, I really want to point out that the Wicca pagan community is just like any other community. We have bad eggs in it. Also, some warnings that I would like to put out there for people who are looking for groups or possibly teachers or other people in the pagan community to look up for advice. First of all, follow your instincts. If something happens, if they try to manipulate you financially, physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever they are doing, if you see warning signs for this and you don't feel comfortable with it, get away from them and report them to other people who you do feel comfortable with. If they are doing something you understand is illegal, then report it to the proper authorities because it needs to be exposed for what it is. If you are looking for a new group and you are reaching out to other people who you do not know, say strangers in another tradition or a particular group or a coven, meet them in a public place for the very first time. Make sure it is a public place like a cafe, a occult bookstore, a library, something like that, something where there is other people around so that you can feel comfortable with them. And eventually, if you do feel comfortable with them, then you can move on to another more private venue to actually get together and talk more about some private or, more sensitive information. And again, always follow your instincts. If they say something or leave something out, pay attention to that. Make a mental note of it. Ask them questions. How do they practice? What is the requirements for initiation? How do they practice? Who is in charge of the coven? What is the coven structure? All of these various things. I'm going to leave a link below to Isaac Bonewit's cult checklist because I think it's very important. I think that is a good base to go from to avoid joining a group where an individual may be a sexual predator or a predator of any stature whatsoever. So again, this isn't happening all over the place. This is definitely a one-off situation, but it is something that we do need to be aware of. And when it does happen, we need to recognize it for what it is, not be apologetic, and expose it for what it is. So again, thank you so much and bless you.